Hey, it's John, Will, and Becky back in your feed today to talk about some really important things. Specifically, if you are working right now with an agency or even an in house team to manage your ads, how can you evaluate your relationship with them, the performance they're driving to understand, are you being served well? Are you, maximizing the potential, or are there red flags, issues where potentially you could consider or should consider going to someone else to manage your campaigns for you? This is obviously a topic that we talk about a lot because we want to make sure as an agency here at Stub Group that we're doing a fantastic job for our clients and never creating situations where one of our clients would want to leave us because they don't feel we're doing the best possible job for them. And we're always evaluating, how are we doing? We know we're not perfect. We're always trying to get better and strive to provide the best in class service for our clients. So, Becky, I'm going to ask you this next question because you get to talk with lots and lots of businesses who are reaching out to Stub Group, who are currently working with agencies or in-house teams, and they're talking about pain points or red flags. I know sometimes they're even asking you, "Hey, is this a bad thing or a good thing?" And then obviously we get the opportunity to evaluate their campaigns often and be able to tell them, "Hey, here's what's good, here's what's bad." So, what would you say are some of the top things right now you're hearing from advertisers who are having concerns about their agency or in-house relationships?
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for people to reach out to us, and it's not necessarily because they feel disappointed with who they're working with or that they know that their campaigns aren't performing or anything like that. It's more that their question is, I don't really know what's going on. How do I know if my agency's doing a good job? How do I know if the numbers that they're giving me are right? How do I know if that relates to profitability for my business as a whole? And sometimes that's a red flag in itself, right? Not understanding exactly what's going on behind, the scenes. And so some things that they are coming to us with is, well, I've been told I have this many clicks and impressions. I've been told I should spend more here, more budget, and I'll get more leads. Or in the transverse, they've been told we can't spend any more money. There's not enough people searching for what you provide. We have to try something different. In other cases, the communication has been a report and that's it. And they are looking at the numbers on this report and they have no idea what it means. So I think that really the pain points that people have when it comes to their agencies and understanding if performance is where it should be is first with communication. Second, with understanding what those numbers mean. And third, with the idea of understanding what happens next. So if those numbers are good, what else should I be doing? Am I maxing out? Is this the only thing I can do? So I think it's super important for agencies to be proactive, communicate that proactivity, and also all of us know we have to dumb down the way that we talk about Google Ads. The three of us, we talk about it every single day, and it's so easy to just blurt out all these different words and campaign types and numbers and terminology, and most business owners don't know what that is. That's why they've hired us. Will, what are some ways that you use to communicate with our clients about how their campaigns are performing and explain it almost in layman's terms so that they understand what we're doing?
One of the most important, crucial things that we want to have as part of our initial conversation, then ongoing, is as a business owner, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve here? And understanding those numbers. So if you're looking to capture more leads, okay, how valuable are all those leads to you? How many of those are you closing, so that we can understand, okay, what's the cost per lead that we can afford to spend? What's the market bear based on competition in your area, things like that. Because we may be able to hit your goals, or we may not be hitting your goals, and we want to be able to communicate over why that is and how we want to try and get there. If it's e-commerce, we want to be able to understand what your margins are, what the return on ad spend or ROI you need to break even, and then what does profitability look like with those goals. And again, are we hitting those? If we're not hitting those, how do we think we can get there, and what are the reasons for that? So understanding what's important to you as a business owner, we recognize that, hey, clicks and impressions are an important metric, but that's not the end all be all. And we want to make sure the conversation goes beyond just those surface level metrics to the why and the how.
Yeah, I think one of those things that separate mediocre agencies from great agencies is being able to have conversations about goals, like you said, and not just, client says, these are our goals, great, let's go hit them, but how do we come up with those goals? Because many businesses, they don't know what is reasonable to expect or achieve even from advertising, platforms. And so if it's simply them picking a number out of the hat and saying, you know what, my neighbor said that getting 10x ROAS is what I should get. Cool, that's my goal. Well, some agencies will say, all right, well, that's what they said is their goal. We're going to go get you 10x ROAS and try and make that happen. But again, what separates the mediocre from the great is being able to say, you know what, let's talk about your numbers. Let's talk about the reality. And actually, we might be able to get a lot more profit for you if we had a 5x return on ad spend, because that would allow us to get so much more traffic, drive so many more orders, that even though each one is less profitable to you, as a sum total, you get more profit dollars. And so it's got to be a conversation back and forth, not just being a yes man. I know it's something that we were talking about even prepping for this conversation here is that idea that a lot of agencies are just kind of yes people. They're told do X, Y, and Z by the client, and they go and do X, Y, and Z. We try not to do that here at Stigma. We try to really view ourselves as an extension of your marketing arm and say, hey, you want us to do X, Y, and Z? X sounds great. Y and Z is not in your best interest, and here's why. And we'll give you the information, give you the data. Ultimately, the client is in charge of things, so ultimately, we're going to do what needs to be done. You're the client paying the ad spend, but it's our job to make you successful. And if we see you doing something or wanting to do something that maybe is not going to work well for you because, again, you don't know as much about the platforms and how they work as the agency that you're working with often, then that agency needs to be able to give you that feedback, and for that to be a conversation and for there to be trust on both sides. Speaking of kind of goals, what would you say, Will, we get to take over lots of accounts from other agencies and in-house teams and whatnot. What would you say are some of the most common problems that you see when we take over that are the types of red flags that someone watching this video should look for in their own account?
The most concerning is if we take over an account that has campaigns running, but the tracking makes no sense. Maybe there is tracking, but it's just page view, which it's not because someone filled out a form. It's not because someone called. It's not because someone completed a purchase. And we have no way to determine, based on what you're tracking in your account, whether it's successful for you or not, whether it's profitable for you or not, whether it has a good cost per lead. And so that's really concerning, because that means that previous marketer or agency you're working with didn't understand your goals and wasn't able to help you understand if you were hitting those or how to hit those. And so we need to have the ability to trust the data that's coming through as much as possible, and being able to attribute that correctly, so that then we can have that conversation with you as far as, hey, we are hitting your goals, or we're not. Here's the trajectory, or here's what needs to happen, or here's the realities, so that we can pivot accordingly. So that's going to be one of the most concerning, just because they didn't understand your goals and they didn't understand how to get there, or they didn't care, because tracking has to be there.
Yeah, and I think another place where you see a lot of those issues, John, and you can comment further, is in the search terms report, right? We're finding a lot of irrelevancies targeting things that aren't necessarily what the client might want. Sometimes really obvious things, right? I think we saw that in a recent client evaluation.
Absolutely. I like to think of the search terms report as the beating heart of an account, which is getting more tricky nowadays with Performance Max campaigns and Google trying to hide that information from you. But you can still see a lot of info, and that's one of the first things I'll look at. If I'm working with our team to evaluate a new account or a new lead who wants us to evaluate things, is look at those search terms and see how many of them are relevant to what you're actually advertising as a product or service. The example you mentioned is a great example. Client came on board recently. They're a moving company, and so we look at their search terms. Their search terms are predominantly things like freight forwarding or U-Haul truck related search terms, things like that, which were kind of generally related to the keywords in the account. And so Google was saying, got broad match, this makes sense. But if someone was actually monitoring those search terms, they'd very easily say, we don't do freight forwarding, we don't do U-Haul, this is obviously irrelevant, add a couple negative keywords, and boom, that problem is solved. And so if you see that type of issue in your search terms and you don't see it being addressed, that's the problem. There's always going to be irrelevant search terms like that. Just the fact that there are some irrelevant search terms, that's not the problem. The problem is if no one is actively monitoring those and then taking action to add negative keywords to cut wasted ad spend. That's a problem because you're wasting ad spend, and it's often indicative of a bigger problem, which is if they're not doing that work, they're probably not doing other necessary work of monitoring and optimizing and seeing what's working in the account.
Yeah, and another thing that people will say to us quite often beyond that is, well, I can tell my agency's not doing anything. I looked at the change history. What's our answer to that?
Yeah, so change history is a super helpful tool in Google Ads in that you can see when changes have been made. So to some extent, you can gauge whether the people responsible for your account are engaged in your account by seeing, are they making changes? It's also easy to misinterpret this because we've had situations where clients are like, well, look, you haven't made many changes in our account this month. That means you guys aren't doing any work. And that's also not true these days because there are many things that used to be manual where you would see tons and tons of changes that now are automated, and you make one significant decision like, okay, we're going to change the target ROAS for this PMAX campaign from 200 to 300%, and you may not want to make a bunch of changes for the next couple of weeks while you see how things change and what performance looks like there. And so what might look like, hey, we're not watching things or making changes, is no, actually we're very strategically not making too many changes because we will hurt your performance by making too many changes. And then there's also the reality, especially in the e-commerce space, that there's lots of things that happen outside of an ad account that directly impact the performance of an ad account. For example, Google Merchant Center. That's where all of the product data and information lives that then runs into your shopping and your PMAX campaigns. And we're constantly making tweaks, fixing disapprovals, improving data in our feeds and Google Merchant Centers for our clients. And none of that shows up in change history because Google doesn't have a change history for Merchant Center. So just because you don't see a lot in change history doesn't necessarily mean that your agency is on top of things. But if performance is bad and you're also not seeing changes and they're not explaining to you, communicating clearly, hey, here's what we're doing, here's what the data means, here's how we can improve, then those things combined are definitely red flags that you're not being served in the way that you should be served.
Yeah, and I would say the key takeaway from that applies to agencies as well as the clients themselves, in that I would highly recommend you reach out to them and ask before making any changes on your own. Will, I know you can testify to people thinking that changes weren't being made when they were, and then going in and changing things that totally upset the strategy that we were trying to present in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one area where we see that is the often very helpful, but not always, recommendations tab or auto apply recommendations within Google Ads. It's very easy to go in there as a business owner and say, oh, look at all these recommendations Google has. Why are we not doing these? Why have we not implemented these changes? It doesn't look like you're paying attention. And the reality is those are automated. They don't take into account your strategy. They don't take into account your business realities, maybe realities that are local that Google may not have context for within the account. And so we do monitor those here at Stub Group. We look for areas that, hey, this is not available. Let's utilize this, whether that's related to adjusting a ROAS target or something like that. But if you go in there and you're just like, oh, Google's recommending these, let's just apply all of them, that can actually have very detrimental impact on your account and performance, because it's not taking into account the reality that you've maybe already made a significant change in a campaign recently, like you mentioned, John, with a budget or a ROAS target, and now you've made another change that's overlapping, that's going to impact the learnings from that campaign, how quickly it can pivot, and also which of those impact performance. Was it the first change that dropped performance? Was the second change? Those types of things. So you want there to be a conversation. You don't want to be stepping on each other's toes with you as a business owner making changes, your agency making changes. You want to know whether those recommendations are good or not, but just because they're there doesn't mean they should be applied. And so making sure to talk through those things.
Absolutely. I'd say if you're watching this, if you're a business owner, marketing manager, just an advertiser who's wondering, am I being well served? Am I maximizing what I can with my campaigns? we'd love to take a look at what's going on for you. We have a free evaluation, free consultation process. We'll just take a look at your campaigns, give you a pretty detailed assessment of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We try to be very honest too. If we see that you're being well served and we don't see significant opportunities to improve performance, we're going to tell you that, because we don't want to sell you on our services and then you come on board and we're like, oh, well, yeah, we can't really do any better than you were previously. So we'll tell you if it's good, we'll tell you if it's bad, we'll give you specific data points and information. Hopefully that'll be useful to you as you try and make sure that your campaigns are set up for success and that you're able to, as we say, dominate Google Ads and make money online. So thanks for watching. Tap subscribe if you want more content like this. And until next time, signing off.